Almost every parent and coach yells the exact same instructions on a Sunday morning. It makes perfect logical sense to say them, but research shows that up to 85% of those words actually impede a player's natural performance and might make them more prone to injury. This book gives us a glimpse into the language the best coaches use instead. I've coached and helped a lot of young football players both on the pitch and rehabbing from injuries as a sports physio. I get why we yell things like plant the foot beside the ball or lock your ankle. We just want to help. It's the most natural instinct in the world, wanting to give our kids the answers. But there's a hidden trap inside that traditional coaching advice. Educators and sports scientists have found that 85% of the time we're using words that make kids stiff, robotic, and unable to adapt. We overload the brain and slow them down. We give them what sounds like great advice, but they end up playing worse. So, what makes up the 15% of instructions that work better? Well, the best instructors use different language that unlocks a kid's natural creativity and fluidity. In this video, I'll show you what that 15% language is. We'll look at how to change your words so you don't hold back their potential, and maybe more importantly, help them stay injury-free. If you want a free printable cheat sheet with practical examples of the language that works, you can download that from the link in the description below. Before we look at the science of what happens in a player's brain, I think we have to be honest about our actual job on the sideline. We're not the main teachers out there. The game is. Your practice environment should do the heavy lifting. The games, the space, the rules are the real teachers. Your verbal instructions are quick tweaks, but how we deliver those tweaks is crucial. So, before we worry about the exact words to use, you need 3 basic rules of engagement. Rule number 1 is use the fewest words possible to say the most. Players can't process a paragraph of information while running and sweating. Give them bite-sized cues. Boil your coaching point down to shorter, ideally a 3 to 5 word phrase. Too long sounds like, Johnny, when you get the ball, make sure you take a touch out of your feet so you can look up. Better sounds like, first touch out of your shadow. I know that's more than 5 words, and that's why I said better, not perfect. But by explaining, again, promptly, and then shortening the phrase during practice, we might say something like a touch out of shadow or first touch shadow. It all depends on what makes sense for you as the parent or coach, the player, and the situation itself. Rule number 2 is coach in the flow. Stopping the game to lecture kills the joy and momentum. There are definitely critical times to blow the whistle and stop play to ask a vital question. But as a rule of thumb, try to avoid it if you can. Deliver your quick tweaks while the game is happening and stand on the sideline and drop short, punchy cues to players as they run by. Rule number 3 is ask, don't tell. If a game isn't working or a player keeps making the same mistake, wait for a natural break. Instead of telling them what they did wrong, ask them what they perceived. When you got the ball in the corner, what did you see? By asking questions, you force them to reflect on the environment, connecting what they see with what they decide to do. So why is it so incredibly important to use those 3 rules? Why can't we just give them a detailed explanation of a technique? Well, research tells us that over-instructing actually disrupts a player's natural coordination. A player can only hold a tiny amount of information in their working memory. That applies to adults as well. And when we tell them exactly how to move their joints, we're using what researchers call an internal focus. This is where the massive performance drop happens. When a player focuses internally on their own body, they stop looking at the game And if a player is constantly listening for your command about where to put their feet, they're not scanning the field, reading the opponent, or making their own decisions. By doing this, we're effectively training them to play blindfolded. We also have to let go of the myth of perfect technique. There's no single textbook way to kick a ball. When you force a kid to fit into one rigid mold, you strip away their body's natural ability to figure things out and find its own creative solutions. And this loss of creativity directly links to injury. Football is more chaotic. The pitch might be bumpy, the ball spins weirdly, and defenders push you sometimes rather unexpectedly. If a kid's brain is completely focused on holding their ankle in one rigid position, they lose their physical vocabulary. They lose the movement repertoire needed to adapt. A rigid player who can't naturally bend and adjust is the player who ends up rolling an ankle or tearing a ligament. If telling them how to move their body parts make them slow and rigid, what do we actually say when we deliver those quick 3-word tweaks? Our goal is to direct the player's attention to the environment, not to micromanage their body parts. Researchers like Gabrielle Wolf and Nick Winkelman have shown that the words we choose drastically alter how fast athletes learn. They break instructions down into two categories: internal focus and external focus. Internal focus is what we want to avoid. This means directing the player's attention to their own body parts, like I said before. For example, keep your chest over the ball or turn your hips. External focus is what we want to use most of the time. This means directing the player's attention to the environment, the target, or the effect they want to have on the ball. For example, drive the ball through the target or find a window when talking about scanning. When you give players a clear intention and point their focus outward toward a target, their brains and bodies naturally figure out the best way to coordinate their muscles to get the job done. You don't need to tell a child how to fire their quad muscles to kick a ball. You just need to give them a clear target and let their body solve the puzzle. To build these instructions, we can use an incredible framework from Nick Winkelman's book, The Language of Coaching. It focuses on 3 Ds: description, direction, and distance. Instead of saying, use the inside of your foot, try giving them a description like, pass it like a golf putt, or give them a direction and distance by saying, paint a straight line on the grass between you and your teammate. When they are receiving a hard pass, don't tell them to relax their leg. Describe the outcome. Tell them to absorb the ball's energy like a sponge, or make the ball stick to your shoe like bubblegum. Now, I do want to clarify something. I'm not saying you can never tell a kid to use the inside of their foot again. Context is everything. Sometimes a player just needs a direct, literal piece of advice, and that's completely fine. We don't have to be purists about it, but the internally focused instructions should be the exception, not the rule. And remember, different players internalize analogies differently. So if one cue or a version of an instruction doesn't click for a player, don't just repeat it louder. Try a different one. This experimentation is key to finding what resonates with your specific players and team. When you step back, let the environment do the teaching and deliver your tweaks using an external focus, that robotic stiffness goes away. Their movements become fluid and more natural. Their performance suddenly jumps, and they become more resistant to injury. Changing the way you speak takes time. Download the free printable cheat sheet from the link below to help you translate these old instructions into better external cues before your next practice. Thanks for watching. See you next time.